And he's here to talk to us about Slash and Spelled. Welcome, Steven.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I was just saying before we went live that Nolan is just an amazing human being who's a wonderful human that I've had the pleasure of speaking with over the last, it seems like almost like a year now, but just always being so helpful and engaging in the community. It's just an absolute pleasure to be here with you. So really appreciate you for having me on so I can talk
Oh,
about my game and just also board games in general in the community, because that the community itself, as someone who's a first-time designer, has been so helpful, so open, so engaging. It's really kind of a magical space. I'm not in a lot of other communities on Facebook, mostly just this one, and it's absolutely wonderful to see all the different people, backgrounds, and responses that I've gotten as I've kind of gone through this journey.
yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, just similar to yourself, I'm pretty new to this community too, and everyone has been incredibly helpful and incredibly open, and just gung ho and excited about everybody else's project and what everyone else is working on too. And it's been very friendly. Someone said, "Is this launching today?"
Oh, I wish. I'll say this. I was hoping to launch in March. I'm a first-time designer, and this has been something that I've been working on for quite some time. And I really want to make sure when I push that launch button that the project is like 90% complete, bulletproof. Everything's ready to go. Everything's been far, far beyond play tested to the point where it's really dialed in. So I could probably launch today and maybe fund, just because I have a pretty low launch goal. Just 15K is what I'm thinking of right now to manufacture the game, but I really want to deliver the best experience, which means that I still got probably another 2 months to go before I can hit that launch button on Kickstarter. But I'm really excited someone's excited for my game, because I'm absolutely excited to kind of get into people's hands and also make it more publicly available in the next coming month. I'm gonna really push it out there and get it all over Tabletop Simulator and do more stuff on that side of things as well.
Love it, love it. Okay, so let's get started with this, right? Before we go into the game itself, or before we go into Slash and Spells, tell us more about yourself, right? Who are you? How did you get into game design? What's your background in all this?
Sure, sure. I'll just say hi, Eric. Good to see you.
Hey,
So my
Eric.
my background actually is not in game design at all. And so my day job, I work for a large HR company doing basically HR software, benefits, and outsourcing. So if you ever have any questions about what kind of medical benefit plans that you might want to elect, I can bore you all day with that and how to optimize that. So that's what I do, and I've been doing software sales for a very long time now. I grew up in the Bay Area. San Jose has been my hometown for a very, very long time. So I've always been around a lot of creative people who are building businesses, working on interesting projects. We have a decent arts and music scene here, but it's definitely very technology focused. So I wanted to be a million things when I was a kid, and I think it's still all over the place, even though I'm kind of settled in a career now. And I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to be a paleontologist when I was a kid. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So there's a little bit of that going on right now. And then at one point, I actually wanted to be a video game designer and potentially like a developer and actually code for video games. There was a bit I was teaching myself how to code and everything, but all those things never really came to fruition in a sense. And I went to school at San Jose State, graduated with a degree in entrepreneurship, which basically just means like a perfect fit for sales, because you basically learn everything. How a business operates, and how to kind of run it. And so it actually sets you up pretty nicely to kind of be engaging with people and understand other people's businesses and how you might be able to help them. So that's kind of how I ended up in sales. But I always wanted to start something. And for this, it was kind of just a random idea I had. I was working another job 3 years ago, and I would have these board game nights with all my friends. We'd play things like Flux and Catan and just a whole variety of different, games like Magic the Gathering and stuff. But oftentimes we'd be gathered, playing Cards Against Humanity, drinking a couple beers. And so I wanted to make a game that we could all play that would be kind of like like a love letter to something that I've always really loved is kind of like fighting games, specifically like video games like World of Warcraft Arena was like my bread and butter. World of Warcraft Battlegrounds. I just love that, feel like League of Legends also ate up a ton of my time growing up, where you pick a hero or champion and there isn't too much going on. You can just grab it and bring it to the table. There might be a bit of a learning curve, but it's mostly just kind of pick up and play, and you're ready to kind of smash your opponent, kind of yell at them and kind of get in their face and really just kind of gloat if you win. I mean, that to me is like my favorite style of game, is a game that's easy to pick up, but competitive. And unfortunately, I know a lot of board gamers are either hit or miss on this one, where you directly go after someone and try to eliminate them from the game. Um, but that for me has always been the best part about multiplayer. I don't mind if I get knocked out first, because I'm going to come back and try to get better and better and better. And that's kind of what I kind of built this game to sort of be like, is something that you can kind of grab and pick up, where it's not too complicated, but it's also not too easy, so that there's a lot of like meat on the bone, and it kind of feels a little bit like you join an arena with your hero. And if you have multiple people, then it gets really interesting, because you have like a team of different unique characters with different unique skill sets that all kind of mesh together and create kind of an epic battle. But the real journey started as I made that prototype. It was all stolen art. It was terrible, to be honest with you. But the funny thing is, all my friends loved it.
Yeah.
It was wacky. It was wild. It kind of also, they all played a lot of the games that I described, so they instantly liked it. And then it got shelved for like a couple months. Didn't really think about making anything out of it. It just kind of sat. And then one of my old bosses, super into Kickstarter, super into board games. I kind of missed that wave. I've always been playing board games as a kid. I know everyone says Monopoly, but it was getting violent in my family between me and my sister, because we'd get abandoned at my grandma's house, and she had like a stack of old board games in her basement in New York. And so we'd be there. My parents would be in like Europe for 2 weeks, and so me and my sister would just play board games nonstop, and my grandma would play Scrabble with us. And as I got older, I got into like more complicated games like Warhammer, and Magic the Gathering was something that's been kind of throughout my whole life, and I really enjoy Magic the Gathering Arena. But I never really thought I would be building a board game. And he kind of said, "Hey, look, I like this prototype you showed me. I know you said, you're passionate about this. Why don't you make something on Kickstarter? Like, you could probably turn this into something. This is not bad. Like, I've backed games that, were sort of similar to this, and I know you could maybe make it into something." And so that kind of started a crazy journey for me to actually think, okay, maybe I'll just take this old prototype with stolen art and everything terrible on it, and actually build a real product, get an artist, build everything from the ground up, write all the lore and everything for each of the characters, and really refine everything and actually make something real, and sell it as like a product. And hopefully everyone loves it, and I can, continue to make other games or even make expansions to this one if it's successful. So that's
Love
kind
it.
of a little bit of a background.
Yeah, I love it. I love how you went through to like what you were doing as a kid, how all of that kind of influenced your current decision to go into this game, and also your background and what you learned in college, and like how it all just kind of converged into where you are today. Because
Yeah.
everybody's lives are just so rich in the back end that you don't really see when you just look at a
Hmm.
game, right? And all of
Yeah.
this just coming together, and even like you're doing the art yourself too for the game that
Well,
you
I'm
told
doing
me
like the
about.
art direction.
Mm.
I wish I could draw as well as my artist, or paint as well as my artist. I'm doing all the art direction, and but I have actually an artist in Germany, Rob, and he's absolutely amazing. He's been working on this project with me for, I mean, bless his heart, man. He's been with me since day one. About 3 years ago, when I like sent him some sketches, it was kind of actually like a perfect kind of marriage in a sense, like between two people, because at the time, I was looking for artists, and the hardest part about running your own business is, you got to look at how much are you willing to invest in your project. And everyone who makes their game knows it's a time investment, but it's also, a financial investment. And oftentimes you're doing it on a prayer. You hope people love your project. You hope that you're going to make it, but you really don't know. And so I must have contacted 30 plus artists when I first started kind of starting the project. And the reason I selected Rob is he was also kind of new in the scene. He hadn't done anything for board games. He, was a super big fan of World of Warcraft, so his art style was very similar to that because it was kind of an homage to it. And he was very creative. He could draw practically everything. And he was willing to work with me and quite reasonable. And we actually grew together because, there was a couple times where things were all over the place. And, I'd have to help him and send him all the specifications for how manufacturers work. And so it was a learning experience for him and it was a learning experience for me because, you know, giving art direction is a lot harder than it seems. And it definitely gets better with time. As you do it more and more, you make less and less mistakes and know how to kind of coach an artist to kind of deliver what you're looking for. But it's absolutely like been a wonderful process. And he's been so like he's been a cheerleader throughout the process as well, because he's excited about the game, and that's kind of why we've had such a great partnership over the years. It's just kind of, he's just a fun human being to work with, and always just adds a lot of humor to the game and just keeps it lighthearted, which is kind of the goal. Should be
Yeah.
lighthearted.
Yeah, I love it. And I think this is a great segue into you telling us more about slash and spells too, right? You already
Sure.
talked about how kind of what things kind of inspired the creation of it. Tell us more about the game. Like, how does it play? What is it about?
Yeah, so I mean, it's about so right now there's only 6 heroes in the game, and ultimately I'd love to expand on that, whether I can add some stuff in via Kickstarter stretch goals, or get this little baby out there and then maybe do a different version with new heroes down the road as an expansion. But just in a nutshell, Slash and Spells is a competitive hero building battleground. And if I were to read you like the little blurb, I wrote this little blurb for the rule book, and I think it kind of gives you a good idea of what it is. So like your choices matter as you shape your hero's thematic mastery powers. There's a thrilling variable turn order to keep victory within everyone's grasp, and there's evolving deck management that makes all your strategic decisions meaningful. So each game you're going to duel against deadly heroes, and they all have unique abilities and strengths requiring a dynamic strategy to be defeated. And so you're going to actually build your victory from the ground up. And essentially what it is there's a variety of different kind of games in the arena combat space. Unfortunately, this game theoretically essentially is an arena combat game, but I wanted to build an open world combat game instead. So there's actually like a world that you're in. It still functions essentially like an arena combat game. I actually call it a competitive hero building battleground, but essentially it's an arena combat game. So you move around
For
the
people who don't
board.
know, what is a hero arena combat game?
So an arena combat game is you have a board in front of you, and you actually would place like a miniature or a standee of some sort onto that, and then you'd actually maybe using cards, powers, however the designer builds the game, maybe move around the board and potentially attack your opponent. There's been a variety of great, arena combat games. Arena of the Conquest, I think, was like the number one for a while, but there's been some great ones. I've been following Bloodstone just launched, and I saw that, and there's so many great games in that genre. It's kind of a big space. I'm hoping to touch a small piece of it. My core competency and what Slash and Spells truly boils down to is it is a pick up and play, more like a medium weight, not super high complexity, not super low complexity game where you can pick a hero, draft a hero with you and your friends. You can play, one-on-one. I'm building a solo mode, so I'll have a solo mode, but you can go all the way up to, 2v2 and play up to 6 players. So it's 1 to 6 players essentially, and you're actually going to build your hero. So you select your hero. There's 6 different heroes. We have a warlock, and for example, the warlock has 3 different mastery paths. He has the ability to command the void powers, dark fire, and corruption powers. Now, those are his 3 masteries. So what I did, the essential kind of like mechanic that is overarching in the game, is if you're familiar with video games, there's a lot of things like Diablo where you have like a talent tree, or even League of Legends has like a talent tree that you build into. And essentially, you select a path that alters your character's base effects uh, to focus on a certain strategy or synergy in essence. And so each hero has three different unique paths that focus them in a different way, whether that's to be more defensive, whether that's to remove effects off them or heal them. In the case of the Warlock, his three paths, the Void allows him to summon Voidlings, steal health, steal energy, and move around the board faster. So it's kind of like a jack of all trades, kind of drain your health and move around quickly so you can't get to them. Whereas Dark Fire is more like a direct damaging tier where you place burning effects on players and on the board that'll deal existing or consistent damage over time and eventually whittle down your opponents. And as the ability to knock off effects, if you're trying to buff yourself and put cool effects on you, he'll be able to push them off and potentially deal a lot of damage in that tier. So then there's also Corruption, which is more of a defensive tier for him. He kind of prevents damage. He puts fear effects on opponents, which can move them around and destroy their energy and deal damage. So it's very off-putting. So he's very much kind of like control-y and gets a lot more defensive and harder to destroy. So there's a lot of different play styles within a character, and that all ties together with the cards. The cards have a unique kind of, I've never seen anyone do this. It is unique about this game, whether people love it or hate it. It is kind of a special thing that I did.
Yeah.
It is the cards itself scale based on where you are in the talent tree. So every
Oh,
card has a base effect. So you always get something. So all the cards are kind of balanced on one metric. So every card is pretty even from top to bottom. I use the same kind of card grading scale for each card. And then there's a bonus section, two bonuses beneath that. And you actually add one of those bonuses depending on what masteries you have. So
hmm,
let's say I decide at the beginning of my turn, I go up into the Void Mastery. So I get a
mhm.
bonus for doing that on my hero board, but I also get a bonus to all the cards in my hand that have one the Void Mastery in it. And I can actually mix and match all the different masteries to actually make better and better cards in my hand. So the game has like a heavy deck or hand management aspect of it, where you're going to be looking at your hand and trying to optimize what masteries you go into. But there's always the chance that you'll draw new cards and cycle out old ones to try to like push a certain strategy, as well as sometimes you might want to get the bonus effect for that mastery path because it could mean victory right then and there, because you get like a one-time bonus for the first couple points in each mastery, and then you actually get a passive, and then each mastery, if you go all the way down up to 4 in one mastery, you unlock an ultimate attack for that. So there's a lot of depth to it, but it's
Yeah.
still pretty straightforward. And that's probably like the main mechanic. But we also have like an action point economy where you can move around the board, and each character is kind of asymmetric on their actions. You can, move around the board. You can sprint, which is a faster move. You can rest to gain energy. You can purge effects from you for energy. You can train to draw more cards, and you can also focus to play more cards in a turn. So there's a lot going on, but it's pretty simple in terms of like the actions, but there's a lot to do because you're managing both your energy total, your life points, which is kind of the object of the game, is to reduce someone's life to 0.
Got it. Well, yeah, it seems like again that there's a lot of replayability, not only with like each character, since there's so many different like strategies you can use with each character, but adding that card component to it again adds kind of endless possibilities in a way, right?
Yeah,
Because there's so many bonuses with just that even base card with the base reward and more.
I've actually never played the same game twice, to be honest with you. I've I've
Wow.
I've played the game hundreds of times at this point, but there's always just something different because you're gonna get some cards in your hand, and there's 18 cards for every hero. They have 18 unique pieces of art for each hero on the cards. And then there's more unique art on the hero boards and the hero sheets and everything else. But each hero has 18 unique cards. So there's no repeats of any cards or anything. So it kind of creates already, because you randomly draw cards. You'll never, typically run out of cards. So you'll probably only see maybe somewhere between 8 and 12 cards a
Hmm.
game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because of your mastery choices, some of those cards are going to be way more powerful and do a lot more things, because it actually expands. Like you'll get an extra line of text, like you can add an extra effect, or you can do something completely different, like you can move a space or become immune to effects. So it
Yeah.
actually massively alters the cards. I've had games that were similar, but I'll be honest with you, no games have ever been exactly the same, just because you have different cards and you don't know what cards are coming. And there's also a small like reaction mechanic where you can
Mhm.
place cards either face up
Yeah.
or face down and bank them for a future turn. So you
Oh,
can
okay.
flip them face up on your turn to basically just kind of activate them and launch kind of a larger combo. Or you can actually react to another player's face up card that they play and actually
Oh,
respond before their card happens. So once you get kind of used to the system, there's a lot of greater depth in terms of kind of counteracting someone else's plan. You can kind of throw it off. And every hero has the capability of playing these cards face down. And for example, Nadara, the Storm Witch, she can summon illusions of herself to the board. So before someone attacks you, you might not have an illusion yet, but you could flip over a card that summons an illusion, and now they don't know which one really is you. And so there's kind of a sense that, you can play a variety of different play styles where
yeah.
you either do a cat and mouse, kind of hide and run away, but then jump back in and engage, or you just stay on the person like glue the whole game and never give them a chance to escape you. And the face up and face down cards kind of allow you to create surprises for your
Mhm.
opponents that I haven't seen a game quite do that before. But it's fun. I really enjoy the process of it.
Yeah, it sounds again really exciting, and the fact that you haven't played the same game over again, and you, the designer, working this on for 3 years already, is
Yeah.
a real testament. And you mentioned a few characters within your game already. How did you decide on these characters? How did you kind of build them up? How did you kind of envision their powers? What was that process like for you?
Well, I'll be honest with you, it wasn't a perfect process. A lot of the characters have gone through some changes from, those 3 years. They've
Hmm.
all evolved though, because when I first designed it, everything was very linear. I hadn't really settled on that, hero mastery mechanic where you had three unique tiers for every hero. Because to be honest, when I first designed it, it was a much smaller, much simpler game in which it wasn't anything, particularly crazy about it. And it needed something. It needed the secret sauce. It needed something that added a lot of creative depth, because I wanted it to be a little bit more meatier. I've played some really good arena combat games or games that are pretty lightweight dueling games, and they're really well designed and they're great. But I wanted a lot more choice. I wanted the ability to kind of fall on my face, or really, flip over a bunch of cards, do a bunch of things in a turn, and really just go crazy and have people, jaws drop because like, wow, you found a way to somehow land that crazy combo that I've been trying to prevent you from landing the whole time. So each hero kind of started off with just some quick kind of sketches of like what the outline was. That was the original kind of idea. And it kind of comes from that old prototype. I had a warlock back then. I had kind of like a knight, a tank, a rogue, kind of standard fantasy stuff. Uh, I kind of picked something that would be like fun, because I wanted all the heroes to be relatable, but also, something that maybe you've played somewhere else, but it'll be a little bit different. So you won't
Hmm.
be completely shocked about how the character plays, so that it could be kind of more pick up and play. Sorry, I don't know if you can uh, hear that. Um,
No.
Something loud in the background. Okay, perfect. Sorry. You know, there's sometimes issues with outside noise, but yeah, so all the characters have a variety of different backgrounds to
Mhm.
go into it. The warlock actually, comes from kind of more of like a almost like Egyptian type
Mm.
location, and he was actually a servant at one point, and then he found an underground temple within his one of his master's locations, and inside was this old kind of demonic altar,
Oh, wow.
and he touched it, and then he's actually possessed by a demon from another universe, the Void. And so his character is kind of like chaotic evil in a sense, but he kind of bounces back between like his normal human self and being possessed. So he's not much of a hero, but every now and then he has hero like motives, but there's always an ultimate kind of evil underlying underneath him. So for him, he has like a lot going on in terms of his background, and everything. He's kind of takes a lot of that kind of sort of Egyptian style and kind of just throws it with some sort of fantasy kind of bits and pieces. But
Yeah.
there's also a forest druid, who I designed, to be a little bit like me. I wanted there to be a
Oh.
perfect even split between male and female characters in my game. So there's three of
Mhm.
each. And so I'm actually a half Puerto Rican and half Russian German on my dad's side. And so for her, I was like, I kind of want to make an elf, but I want her to be like kind of like Latin looking. Like, can we make her skin a little bit darker? And so she has a bit of kind of this like primal elf style versus kind of like a high elf. So in the woods, there's like this giant, beautiful forest called Ashenville out in Slash Spells universe. And one thing I can show is kind of the map really quick, because that's
Ooh,
the
yeah.
open world side of things that I was talking about. So I'll just go kind of grab it behind me.
Yeah, that'd be great. We're gonna see some of the maps.
So what I really would love to be able to do, and I've kind of touched it in the past,
Yeah.
is doing some more writings for each of the locations, because each hex, in an arena battleground game, each
Uh-huh.
hex is usually like a blank piece of dirt, and you just kind of move around very simply drawn locations,
Yeah.
which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, this is a little bit more in your face and complex, but what
Mhm.
I would like to be able to do is to make an adventure mode on it in the future. But
Yeah.
for right now, you can see this is actually, where is it? There we go. This is what I'm talking about. There's a giant tree.
Yeah.
This is actually Risha the Druid's homeland. There's a variety of different elves. So there's
Yeah.
the more posh elves and the more kind of primal style elves. So she has a variety of different powers and abilities, but she's
Yeah.
basically a keeper for her lands. And kind of the overall lore is there's a giant volcano in the center of the map,
Yeah.
Mount Combat, and everything's on an active lava flow. So all the lands kind of shift on tectonic plates. And so there's a lot of conflict in the land because everyone's
Mm.
always moving around and invaders kind of pop in into the land here. So she's always kind of defending her spot from all sorts of things like orcs, and there's some bug creatures I've created that have their own land, and there's dwarves and gnomes and everything else under the sun that you might want in a fantasy game. So there's that going on, and she has some really cool powers, summoning wild creatures to the battlefield like bears and basically like a forest guardian, which is a giant treant style creature. So she has a variety of different mechanics, everything from cleansing away effects to kind of casting kind of like nature spells on targets. But all the characters have like a really weird over-the-top background. There's a rock giant that kind of has like sort of some Viking lore style to him. And his backstory is he died in battle, and he died in battle in an area that was filled with these ancient runes, and he
Yeah.
was actually brought back to life from these runes into a giant rock. And so his backstory is he's constantly searching for the relics under Mount Combat to actually transform back to human, because he actually left his wife and kids behind. So there's kind of a little bit of a backstory there. So all the characters have like a unique backstory,
Yeah.
and they all come from a different place that you can actually find on the map. And the dream is to launch this and be successful so that I can add a ton more heroes from different spots on the map with different
Love it.
backstories and different skills.
Love it. Yeah, there's a lot of rich characters that you're creating and building, not only taking inspiration from your own life, your own self, but also, all these other games and other things that you've played in the past too. So, we covered all this the rich characters that you have in your game. We covered kind of the mechanics, all the different things you've added into the game itself.
Mhm.
What part of your game are you most proud of? I'm sure there's a lot to be proud of, but what are you
Good
most
question.
yeah, what are you most just proud of creating
Um,
all this?
So to be honest, I think the thing I'm most proud of is hearing people enjoy it or seeing it on their faces. I know in the pandemic there hasn't been much seeing people's faces playing it, but
Mm,
I like watching people solve complex problems. And I think there's something magical about a game when you can unlock something and have that aha moment where you can string together a bunch of complex thoughts and ideas into an actual, event. And so for me, just seeing people engaged with it and spending time on it and enjoying it really is the reward for me. I mean, if I were to pick a, like a physical mechanic or something, I think the mastery traits is probably where my game's the most interesting in terms of the space. Having to balance and create three unique masteries for one hero, basically splitting one hero into three different micro heroes. That was an undertaking because it's one thing to come up with a general theme, but then expressing that theme as you combine multiple other themes into those themes, it gets kind of crazy. I have a system for it, thank God. I've built it,
yeah,
but that was probably the most interesting thing, and it definitely still is the most interesting part of my game when it comes to developing new characters. That is it. Coming up with the three unique things that they have an extra mastery over that can go into kind of a depth because each character has like a hero sheet which has special effects for them, so they have unique
mhm,
effects and they have their masteries. So there's definitely a lot going on, which really goes back to that replayability side of things.
yeah,
But yeah, I think
love it,
that for me is the best part.
love it, love it. And I guess on the flip side of this too, like what are kind of some of the challenges or maybe failures you faced along the way, and like how did you overcome them? Because as a time game designer, even before we got onto this, we were talking about how it was sometimes hard throughout this
Oh,
process. It's
it's
been 3 years.
it's so hard. I have nothing but respect for people who do this either a full time or even just as a passion project. Like this is one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I've done some really hard things in my life. Like I was in collegiate rowing, and it's basically like you just keep rowing until you throw up is basically like what they tell you to do. And that I thought was character building. I was like, oh, I'm building character for the future so that I can be successful in life and be able to do things. And I'll tell you, this is just as hard as getting blisters on your hands. It is. It's a learning process. I mean, I come from a sales background with some marketing, and so that part's a little bit easier. But even then, there's a lot of stuff that, to be honest with you, I'm not super into Facebook or Instagram. Like I've kind of checked off. I'm like, the only reason I'm really on it all the time now is for board game stuff. Like if it wasn't for board game stuff, I'd probably just be like a ghost because, sometimes I want to live my life. I don't want to have to post about everything, but
Mhm.
it's really nice to be engaging, and it actually has kind of gotten me more into social media when I kind of checked out of it. But the game design process, you got to rely on people who I kind of stand on the shoulders of the giants who came before me. I've played so many games over the years, but you don't really understand game design until you build your own. Like it really is something else because there's you have complete flexibility to create all your own problems, which if you're a creative person, you'll just create all these new problems you didn't see because everything has to be balanced. Everything is a give and take. I can't give a character an ability that's super overpowered, unless another character has an overpowered ability that's basically theoretically balanced because it moves some sort of other part of the game along and could potentially equal a victory for you. Because there's so many ways to outright win a game. I mean, the ultimate goal is to deal damage and to reduce person to zero. But there's a variety of different small strategies within that I can play around with. Like if you're not within range, you can't hit me. So theoretically moving an extra space, getting out of range is actually a pretty significant thing versus just dealing more damage over and over and over again. So there's a lot of little nuances that you play with. And I know I mentioned there's the board game mentorship program. I actually had a mentor through that, but I want to go back to like when I first got started. There is some people who I have to say, I owe like a debt of gratitude to. John Brieger hosted these weekly design sessions pre-pandemic at a local game store called Game Castle here in the Bay Area, out in I believe it's Mountain View area.
Love
And
Game Castle.
he had just kind of transitioned to doing this full time. And I saw a post because I was just joined all the board game groups, and I reached out to him and I just kind of asked him about his journey, and he just gave me some good advice and invited me to these play sessions. And seeing other designers, I met like Floyd Liu, who's been absolutely like kind of a mentor to me and just a really awesome human being. There's John Velgus and Michael Dunsmore, who've all been there during the PlayStation sessions and saw my really shitty prototype of my game and ripped it to shreds, which at the time I needed. This was like 3 years ago. It wasn't anything like what it is now. I think I had roll and move in the game, and they literally were like, "Are you serious? Another roll and move game?" I didn't realize that was like a no-no for the most part. Like a lot of people hate roll and move. But as a new designer, you kind of, have to learn these things, take your lumps. So they were wonderful. They were great people and still, involved in designing games to this day. And I also got a mentor from Board Game Mentorship Program, and he helped me through a lot of things. Technical writing rules is probably the hardest thing there is. Some people are, I think, better at it. Some people love it. I've met some people who are into it, but most people say it is the most horrible part of designing a game because it's the most tedious. It's the most exacting. If you fail to write good rules, your players fail to be able to play your game. So there's a very high curve for what you need to be able to deliver. So, as someone who's more probably the creative type, I don't have a math background. I don't code things. That engineering mindset is probably very helpful there. I've seen that in a lot of other people who have that skill set. So I was matched with Paul Peterson from Smash Up, and he showed me what it's like to be doing this full time. There are certain people, out in the board game community who are super helpful. They've done a couple games or they've been involved in the game industry before, and just being a fly on the wall, hearing how they talk about certain mechanics, certain things like, hey, if you write the rules this way, you pigeonhole yourself. None of your future games can be able to do this mechanic because you've locked it. You need to write your rules open so that if you want to play around with certain pieces of your heroes in the future, you have the flexibility to do that without rewriting the rules, because you can't rewrite the rules for a lot of these things once they go out into the wild. So you're stuck with whatever problems you created without thinking ahead. And so having, those expert kind of nuggets of information, because you probably know that they've made that mistake. A lot of what I can help new designers with, things that I can kind of say, are all just rookie mistakes that I've made that I can look at someone's project and be like, this is definitely something that may be an area that you might want to improve upon, or the marketing looks great, but what about this? Things like that. Having someone who's way, 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 way more of an expert in all this stuff mentor you was absolutely amazing. And I got to thank, people like Eric Geller and Wes Woodbury and just so many other, designers. I have a close relationship with my friend Sebastian, who's designing Runeslingers. Everyone in the community helps. Ben Moy is a perfect example of this. He's everywhere at all times, spreading love and kindness and great game ideas and helping so many people. Standing on a shoulder of giants. I mean, I can't say it enough. There have been so many cooks in the kitchen in terms of people who've helped me with small tweaks here, advice there. I'm super grateful. So I would say if I could give any advice, you're going to have really challenging things that stump you. Sleep on it, but also rely on the voice of the crowd. There have been times where it hurts because it's like your baby, but you really need to hear what other people think of it. You
Yeah.
can't just kind of um, turtle shell and just prevent yourself from hearing the truth. Because to be honest, if you get the same answer from 6 people, they're probably right. There's no way that they're wrong. Like you would have to be asking 6 crazy people for all of them to say something that wasn't the truth, at least from my personal experience. When I ask like out into the communities for help on certain things or what their thoughts are, most of the time I have to be like, wow, that's actually pretty accurate. I mean, if you can give them the right information, they'll be able to point you in the right direction, I feel like.
Yeah. So basically, like from what I'm hearing, it's again a lot. It's a big learning curve throughout the whole entire process, and there's a lot of people out there that can help you through it as long as you firstly take that step to ask. Right? A lot of people are afraid to even ask, but you made it clear that you can just go out and ask multiple people, different backgrounds, different areas of your life, offline, online, things like that, just to help you through the different aspects of this. Just asking, having those conversations.
Oh yeah, and I did see a message from someone asking about the
Hmm.
damage calculation.
Yeah, I was gonna
It's
get to that.
exact. It's exact. I love dice. I think I'll make a dice game in the future. I already have an idea for something pretty cool that involves dice. But this game, it's all exact. Um, Dice is awesome and you can play around with it. There's so many cool mechanics you can do. But I just went for pure damage. Like it's on the cards. It gets modified by your hero mastery, but they really it made balancing a little bit easier, and it made turns a little bit faster that you don't have to roll things. And there's a lot of great dice games out there that kind of tickle that. So I didn't want to kind of create another one just because I felt like the market had some really good games out there, and I wanted to add something a little bit different. Um, so hopefully that answers your question.
That's great. Yeah. So with that said, going through all this, when do you launch? When can we expect Slash and Spells to come to the market? When can we be ready to like press that back button?
Yeah, I mean, like, just right now, I'm starting to kind of start turning on ads again for the
Hmm.
marketing process. Very fortunate that because I've been working on this for a while, and I started kind of the marketing maybe like 6 months ago, just very, very surface level, just like inviting people into the community. I have a Facebook group doing weekly play testing. I would love for everyone just to join there. I'm still posting some things. There's a chance for you guys to influence some of the art and the cards before I launch. Just kind of putting a finishing touch on a lot of different things. And I'll be launching the version of Slash and Spells on Tabletop Simulator for everyone to play. There's going to be a solo mode that I would love for you guys to play test. That's going to be kind of a built-in expansion on launch. But I'm looking at launching in April. Late April would be when I would say that the game will be on Kickstarter. It is going to come as soon as I can get everything locked down. So I need to get some review copies for people in the media, and I want to get those out pretty soon. So that's kind of the thing that I need to wait for, is for them to kind of review it and kind of get that information out there, and I can push the button on Facebook. I mean, right now I'm sitting at a 500 and I think 25 followers on the Kickstarter page. Feel free to add yourself to the followers. I'm really just trying to bring a high value game with a reasonable price point, with a ton of replayability, with a lot of love in it, and a lot of fun. So hopefully, if you like games where it's a competitive battleground game where you fight each other and you can have teams of your friends, um, this might be a good fit for you. So
Love
check it
it.
out.
Love it. Yeah. So for people listening and tuning in later too, the links to the Facebook group and also the Kickstarter Notify Me on Launch page is going to be, in the actual comments section of here. So you can feel free to go and join both of those so that you can talk more to Stephen too. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for your time and talking us through your kind of creation of the game, all the struggles that you face, and also how, you've gotten to this point after 3 years of working on the game. So thank you so much for sharing all this with us.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Nolan. This has been wonderful.
Awesome. And so everyone else, go and follow Flash and Spells online, and we will see you at launch.
Appreciate it. Feel free to message me or be involved in the community. I'd love to field any extra questions you have or just be involved.
Love
Thanks
it.
again.